Before then, guys, if you're enjoying this content, if you stop by this panel, all right, and been enjoying what we've been seeing so far, or again, if it didn't know issue, it doesn't matter. I don't care. Hit that follow button right now. Hit that follow button. Make sure notifications are on, so I'm going live. We do this all the time. Don't want you to miss out on any of this content that we have for you, and we have a lot of it. Exclamation for social chat for social media. Hit that follow button here first on the Twitch channel, but then plenty of places for you to follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter. Discord, jump into our Discord where everything happens in Discord, including this panel, including the after panel we'll have later on, where you sitting at home may be involved. So stick around for that. TikTok is where you'll find amazing clips from the show, and then YouTube is where you find the VODs. Like, comment, subscribe, because then becoming a YouTube member, hitting that join button, supporting us that way. Okay, so we are going to go to our next topic. All right, and I'm sure that this will be even calmer than the first one, right? The Texas GOP has just adopted a platform that declares homosexuality to be an abnormal lifestyle. It also says that no one should be granted special legal status based on their LGBTQ plus identification. Do you agree with this? Should we not have special classes for sexual minorities? And if you don't agree, and this is a sign that Republicans are a party that simply cannot be negotiated with anymore. Excuse me. Yeah, so this just came down the pike. Texas GOP, they came up with a platform. It's a pretty horrific one. It's not just like calling them abnormal lifestyle. It goes to the whole thing with homophobia, transphobia. And there were a few other things there that we were just discussing, just like really the most ranked things within their party that's been coming to light. But I'm wondering about that. Should we have special classes? So this kind of dovetails with our last topic. We kind of know where the battle lines are already drawn here. Still, we'll do opening statements. Start with Manwick.
Oh, wow. Okay. So let me take a breath and get this out here. So yes, I do think that the platform of the Texas GOP party is pretty horrific, right? Like when you look into it and you go through it, it's a step backwards in almost every direction. I think that there is still definitely transphobia, homophobia, etc. out there, and this is just evidence of it, right? The government has responsibility, again, to protect minorities, whether they be minorities of race, minorities of religion, minorities of sex, etc., etc., etc. That said, right, like this idea that we can no longer negotiate with the GOP party, what does that even mean? Like, what are our other options other than negotiation and talking? I think that I refuse to believe that these people are no longer should be treated as people, that we need to reason and do our best to convince all that we can. And that's the key word, all that we can. So these people who are espousing these horrific rhetoric gets voted out. So that's my position.
Thank you, Black Toy.
There's some stuff in here that I agree with, and some stuff I disagree with. I disagree with the wording. It literally states homosexuality is an abnormal lifestyle choice. I think that's very poorly worded, and it's kind of a shame that they would put that in the platform. But there's like no taxpayer funding for sex change. I mean, that's something that I'd probably agree with. Counseling methods, I would probably agree with that. Like an adult should probably get whatever counseling methods they want. I'm a lot more skeptical when it comes to children. Same thing with the gender identity. I think any adult should be able, and for some reason they have it's 21 here. I think it should be 18. If you're 18, you should be able to kind of do whatever you want in terms of, affirming surgery or hormones or anything along those lines. But for some reason they say 21. Again, I disagree with that. So some stuff in here is okay, and then some stuff is very poorly worded and not good. And I would just wish they would revise it to be more pro-liberty, but again, that's why they're Republicans, unfortunately.
Okay. Ashley.
Okay, I'm gonna try and be quick, but I have a lot to go through. So, I think that what it was kind of discussing, with the protections and stuff, and especially with like transitioning at 21, being like the earliest that they're cool with you doing that, that's just ridiculous. So just going through it, right? In terms of what a trans person is, I'm going to talk from the trans angle because that's what I know really well. But it seems like trans people are pretty static in terms of their gender identity for their lives. They might change their understanding of it, but it seems like neurobiologically there is something going on that is making them identify the way that they identify, and this isn't something that can be changed, right? When you do studies where you just raise boys as girls, they still have this idea that they're a boy in the back of their head, and that's been done. So I think that's pretty clear that there's something static within an individual on their gender identity to a degree that can't be changed from the outside, and we should understand that. A lot like something like race. I'm not gonna say that. I am gonna say that. I'm gonna say that's like on the same idea, the same core principle of why we protect race is the same core principle of why we'd protect LGBT people. It's not something that can change, right? And discrimination on that factor would just kind of be unreasonable. It would be unfair, right? It feels like there's a lot of stuff in the US in which trans people specifically like have a lot of less rights than a standard citizen. So I would be for giving them like protections to make sure that they have access to their rights. I mean, you could look at stuff like the trans pank defense, right? Like this is not having a right to life, right? To a degree, right? We could look at all this stuff. My main point overall is that I think that like in order to have trans people exist in the US, LGBT people in general, we do need to protect them and allow them to exist. And I think that saying that we can't reason with a party is kind of weird. I think that we have to, right? I'm not going to say let's go revolt tomorrow. So I would agree with Wick on that. Like, that's all we can do. But yeah, to say that this is over the line or this is kind of fucked up, yeah, this is very fucked up.
Let's go to Fanatic.
Whew. Yeah, this should be a pretty easy topic. I don't think there's going to be any disagreement here. Well, for one, obviously, I think that like I guess people are getting really offended by the verbiage. I mean, by fact, I guess you would probably have to say that like homosexuality is an abnormal lifestyle, just in the sense that they're like a hyper minority. So we know it's normal, we know it's normative, and this is not something that we would say is normal. I think the idea of like denying them any sort of legal status. There was a reason why we like created the Civil Rights Act, which specifically said that you couldn't discriminate against people based on, race and religion and all these other things. And we've added sexual orientation and gender identity and all these things specifically because we want to prevent discrimination. I think the idea that you wouldn't give legal protected status, I think is ridiculous. Do I think that there's something wrong with calling it an abnormal lifestyle? Probably not. I think, and the other things that they've gone into, I think that they were reasonable. I think if you look at the heavy-handed way that the APA has pretty much like hamstrung any sort of therapists or psychologists from helping people to align with the gender at which they were, the gender more associated with their sex. These heavy-handed things, these heavy-handed ways that they've like pretty much forced some of these transgender issues down people's throats, we're seeing a reaction from the right in which they're becoming even more regressive. I think finding ways of meeting people in the middle and like finding like reasonable pathways will like avoid these crazy regressions. But the left just doesn't seem to want to do that. They just want to throw out the system and force everything, and this is what they're getting in response. It's sad.
Okay. Okay.
Oh yeah. Shit. Let's say it's. I don't believe that I believe that it's wrong for the Texas GOP to not want to label them as a protective status. Personally, I do. I am somebody who is of the opinion that being gay, lesbian, I don't need to go through the whole alphabet. Is not something that's learned or you're groomed to be, so to say. I think that it's more biological. But at the end of the day, that is a trait that I think people can't control. I don't think that it would be wise to not protect those people and just allow you to indiscriminately discriminate against them. When it comes to describing it as abnormal, I personally have a problem with the government telling people what is normal and abnormal. And at that point, I kind of just say fuck off. Like, I really I just disagree with that. I would say, like, is somebody who's right wing. Like, I have a real problem with, like, Christian nationalists and people who want to legislate their Christian morality onto the masses. I'm like, for example, I'm somebody who doesn't like abortion, but I think it's fucking stupid to, like, actually try to overturn Roe v. Wade. And to me, it's wrong. But yeah, I mean, the only thing I did see there in the proposed legislation would be, like, the trans healthcare. That one's kind of, like, contentious. I don't quite know what to think of that. But I won't take any more time. But.
Thank you. Spartacus.
Did not expect that.
Yeah. So, about this topic exactly, I think that the Texas GOP adopted the platform, declared homosexuality to be an abnormal lifestyle. I disagree with that. I don't think it's abnormal to be yourself. I think everyone's different. I don't think in any way, shape, or form it's abnormal to be yourself. But at the same point, I don't think that I think we need to do away with a lot of, like, special legal statuses. I think that would help a lot if we did away with a bunch of different special legal statuses. I'm not necessarily just addressing LGBT with this, but no, I think that they are who they are, and they should have the right to be who they are. It's not an abnormal lifestyle. So no, I think that's who they are. I think that's who they were born as, and I don't think they should receive discrimination because of it.
Thank you, Doobie.
I think it's obviously abnormal, right? Like, this is a very tiny percentage of the population. The vast majority of people are, like, heterosexual, right? So yeah, by definition, like, it is abnormal. Abnormal doesn't mean like wrong, right? To be clear, but it's clearly abnormal. Like, we just got to be honest about that. I think that I absolutely agree. I mean, you know me, I don't like the Civil Rights Act. Specific portions of it, and this one in particular, right? I don't like that people aren't allowed to discriminate. I think it's fine to discriminate if you're going to do it. Just openly be an asshole, I guess, and if people don't want to do business with you, that's fine. And I think that the reason Republicans are kind of pushing in this direction is because you have so many people on the left in the Democrat Party who are not acknowledging, right, that there is a social aspect to this, that some of this is, like, conditioned, right? So given that it's conditioned, and they think it's a bad thing, they're going to start pushing, trying to give people an opening to, like, pull their kids away from that conditioning, whether it's on TV, the public schools, wherever the fuck, right? So I think that's all this is. And I think if Democrats were more honest about the social aspect, right, of, like, gender identity or sexuality, whether it's gay or trans or whatever the fuck, I think you wouldn't have this kind of, like, knee-jerk reaction from the right.
Yeah, so obviously I take a lot of issues with this bill. It's authoritarian solution to gender ideology. The idea that they shoe in that it's abnormal. It's like, well, being a Twitch streamer is abnormal. Like, what the fuck does that mean? Being an artist is abnormal. Being, like, a writer is abnormal. Like, why are you doing this? And it's very clear that Doobie's kind of, like, right here, is that the gender ideology has been so pervasive in the APA and the AMA, like Fanatic mentioned, right? That it's so pervasive that, doctors are terrified to not engage in gender affirming care. Psychotherapists are terrified to be able to treat their patients with psychotherapy. And so instead, we're peddling pseudoscience in the name of gender ideology, which is just, the newest form of, neo-Marxist philosophy as a means of destroying the idea of gender and heteronormativity being, maintaining the superposition, etc. It's that same push from the left to try and destabilize Western institutions. The real answer here is not right-wing authoritarianism. The real answer here is that the government needs to get out of licensure, right? The real answer here is that the APA has a state-granted monopoly on the licensing of psychotherapists, well, along with, the ACA, CSAC, et cetera,
Yeah.
right? But these are gained monopolies. And what we should have instead is we should have universities and systems like that be able to step out from the government and be able to engage in psychotherapy. There's a lot of other things in the bill that I'd like to talk about, but I don't want to make the opening statement.
Ashley.
Well, I think there's a big point.
Oh, Ashley. You muted, friend?
I just kind of wanted to ask you, Scott.
Mhm.
So do you think that there should be like no oversight over mental health professionals at all? Like, do you think
I don't
that
think
if
the
I'm-
state should be involved in it. No.
Okay. So
Because
you
I
don't-
think,
So
yeah.
to clarify, if we had a psychotherapist, right, that
Mm-hmm.
wanted in his therapy to just chop people's like fingers off, let's say that's something absurd, right? He says, if you are depressed, you should only have 4 fingers and that will solve it, right? And he is convinced of this. Maybe he's even qualified to a degree, right?
Mhm.
Should nobody be able to tell this person, hey, that's kind of dumb. Don't do that.
No, of course not. That's a total straw man of what I believe.
No,
So,
I'm
Scott-
asking. So I'm asking
Yeah.
who would tell them that then?
Well, I mean,
Who should
eventually,
tell
I mean, I'm an anarchist,
Tell
so eventually
market.
I'll get rid of the government. But like in our
Okay,
current
but who
situation,
would tell them that?
like if we're in our current situation, right, where the state maintains a monopoly on power and violence in the criminal justice system, right, it's very obvious that engaging people to do self-harm, right, is a criminal act. Like I don't think we need
Okay, but
the
I'm
government.
asking,
What
who
I'm
does
saying,
this regulation?
no, what I'm saying is
Who do you
there's a
want to
difference
do?
between the state punishing people that have actively done specific harm, right, and corporations or private organizations such as the APA not being given a monopoly by the government to say we're the only people that can license therapists. Just like when the PsyD was invented to go against the PhD in psychology, and PsyDs were more specifically orchestrated to go towards psychotherapy, whereas PhDs were more research focused. I think that we should have more competition in licensure and in organizations, so that we can have organizations that have certain ethical guidelines that match some people's values, and others that have ethical guidelines that match other people's values, and people can get the care that they feel is best for them. If they
So-
actively harm people, that's a different thing.
So out of curiosity, right?
Mhm.
When the medical literature seems to be pretty much like universally saying that trans people are better off transition, we can disagree.
That's not true.
Kids
I
are
disagree with
different.
that literature completely. I can tell you why.
Okay,
It's
so you think
completely
it's all
wrong.
fake?
No, I don't think it's all fake.
Okay,
I think
so
the
do you think
correlation
we
is not equal. I think you're peddling pseudoscience, right? The fact of
How
the matter
so?
is that because when you have a large number of people with OCD, autism, ADHD, disorders that are comorbid that require fixation, right? And then you give them gender affirming care because you're in a situation where the APA is forcing psychotherapists to basically give gender affirming care or face ethics violations and lose their licensure, right? When you're in that position, what ends up happening is you package comorbid issues, right, and fixation along with grooming and indoctrination towards gender identity disorder or gender dysphoria. And then what happens is the suicidality rates and the general satisfaction with life surveys do get better for a period of time because they're going through transition. They're fixated on that and they're going through a process. Once they pass, of course, passing is you're going to be treated better. You're going to be recognized more. So suicidality and general life satisfaction surveys will go down. But we have a lot of emerging evidence that in this new wave, especially in the UK,
Okay.
male to female,
Got it.
I'll be super quick. Male
You
to
show
female
any of them.
desisters, male to female desisters, it can take up to 10 years, as well as desisters that are female to male. You usually get like 6 to 7 years.
So
Okay,
Fabian,
but
so
like,
Fabian,
what-
just
wait,
wait,
I need
one
to say this
second,
really
one
quick.
second,
Sorry.
Can
one
I just
second.
ask one question? One question.
Mhm.
What percent of people detransition, based on the data you've seen?
So that is widely, we have no idea. Right. So like if you're talking about
Oh,
children,
give me a general.
right?
Give me a general.
So if you're talking about children, right, in terms
Because I
of
know the studies
desisters-
that you're going to point to. I've read
Right,
them all.
if you talk
Or
about
vast
children-
majority of them.
Right.
Well, the
so
majority of children
one
do.
that people often cite, there's a meta-analysis by Journal of something in psychiatry. I have to look it up.
Yeah.
That is like 2018. It's a meta-analysis of 10 other
Yeah, I've
studies,
seen
right?
that.
And that ranged like all the way from like 30%
Yes, but
to
that-
98%, right?
But that also
So-
didn't have kids that took any HRT or anything. They just like dressed like a girl for a
Yeah.
bit.
So
and then
if
decided
so
that
if
we're
they
talking about
didn't
social
so if they
transition.
didn't if
Wait,
they didn't
wait.
transition, they were not trans. Like that's if they
So-
didn't
they,
get
they
the
socially
medication. or the-
transitioned. They
So
did not
Fabian-
medically transition.
Yeah, so
Fabian,
the argument there will be that hey, if we don't give these children access to medical transition, they're not going to be trans in 5 years.
That's
so,
it.
so why would we give them
Fabian,
access to it?
are you Fabian?
Okay,
Are you
we
pro?
we got multiple things I want to say here. We got Wick, Fanatic, and Spartacus.
Wait,
That's
can
it.
I say something really quickly? So
Okay.
I'm
Finish up.
I'm very sensitive to like bigotry when it pops up on these panels. And someone here was talking about like having your arms cut off is like a means of like therapy.
Fingers.
Transabled people do exist. There are people out there who experience dysphoria with their body and they feel like they should be disabled and they attempted to give themselves a disability, to have their eyes cut, burned, or their arms cut off, et cetera, et cetera. Right, so like don't dismiss those people.
Thank you for
okay?
the trans-able representation. Do appreciate.
I respect all people.
Okay, let's go to
There's a
Wick,
lot
Fanatic,
to
Spartacus.
unpack here. I just want to single. I'm sure other people will address the other points, but I want to single in and focus on the point of deregulating things such as psychotherapy, such as food drug administration, such as these practices. There's a very good reason that the state has a monopoly over some of these things, or has a say in saying what we should and should not allow, right? Like, and so we can argue what should adjust, if the state should adjust how it does it, and that's fine, right? Like, I think it's fine to argue one way or another, but let's not act like deregulation is going to fix a problem. No, it's going to exacerbate so many more. It may fix a couple, but
this is not true.
Like,
No,
you
this is
say that, but
completely
you
not
gotta
true.
you making an assertion, dude, but you got to provide evidence.
I'll back it up. I'll back it up.
At all.
Which you
You
didn't.
can't.
Yes, I can. I back it up, right? So the APA, the ACA, Certified Substance Abuse Counselors Code of Ethics, all of licensed marriage and family, masters in social work, all of these are already private organizations that regulate themselves. The only thing that is regulated, right, is the licensure by the state. The state has determined that these organizations that they like, they will give a license to, and then require, in order to practice psychotherapy, that you must have the licenses that they say. But they regulate themselves. When they do ethics violations, you are brought before APA's board. You're not brought before the state.
So basically, you're just agreeing with me that they have standards that they have to hold to if they want to get these licenses. Is that true or not true?
It's widely different.
It's true. It's true. Yes, it is. It's a super easy thing to say. You could use word salad, but you could just say it's true or it's not true. Is it true or is it not true that in order to get these licenses, these private companies have to maintain certain standards? Yes or no?
Yes, they have to.
Okay, that's all I needed to say.
No, but listen, you're making a really like mid fucking level. Oh my God, so stupid. So like the problem here is that every state is going to be different. That's fine. But what you're also seeing is that the state picks which ones it wants to do, but it doesn't pick the same standard for the ones that currently exist, right? These private so for example, in the state of Virginia, if you're a psychologist, you need 2,000 hours, patient hours, you need 200 sit-down hours with a trainer. But if you're a certified substance abuse counselor, those numbers are different. And so the state gets to pick the winners and losers, and then those organizations work in this corrupt incentive structure between the state lobbying the state that other competitors get put out.
Should be changed. Okay, but to say that we should remove all standards because you disagree with some of the standards,
nobody said remove all standards.
Insane.
You're saying batshit insane shit because you're not smart enough to understand what I'm arguing. Other licensing organizations should be able to compete, and people should be able to pick who they want to go to.
I do want to focus less on the licensing and more on the topic at hand, being Texas GOP when they've done.
Well, I'm just responding to people that don't know what they're talking about.
I understand you did. That's fine.
Mine was going to be regarding
Fanatic, Spartacus, and then Lactoid.
So I think, I really do feel like anybody who's ever studied benign neglect recognizes how like LGBTQ stuff can a lot of times be used to be very much like advocate or advance anti-Black legislation or to ignore the Black experience within this country. But I love the fact that at least people do seem to tend to want to listen to the problems of LGBTQ people. I just wish they probably like displayed the same sort of thing towards Black people so that we could actually get the reparations that we actually deserve and need. I would say that the thing that they're talking about as far as allowing for allowing for legislation to be able to, allowing for therapists to be able to practice therapy and in some ways help people with the idea of aligning with their sex or aligning their gender with their sex. I think it makes sense when we know how common the sisters are. It doesn't make sense to me. Even if it's only 30%. If it's 30%, that means at least 30% of these cases, the therapist should be able to explore that to discover Well, I mean,
according to the studies I've seen,
from
the highest
the
one is
studies
2.7.
the studies I've seen is literally the majority of children who experience gender dysphoria.
Okay, but do
5
you
years,
agree
hold
for
on,
the 2.7?
the majority of children who experience gender dysphoria at 5 years old, by the time they're 18 years old, will no longer have it. I've read studies that have said that the majority of children who experience who identify as transgender by adulthood go on to identify as just same-sex attracted. That's what I've seen studies on. Literally every study I've seen.
Yeah. So what's the
Every
adult rate?
meta study I've seen on that. So then, if that's
What's the adult rate?
so if that's the case, then that would mean, then let's not try to move that goalpost, sweetheart. So if that's the case, then what we would do is we'd say for children, it would make sense for us to be able to have therapists be allowed to explore the possibility that this is temporary and help children with maybe identifying what is causing them to feel this way, such that they might be able to align with their gender, with the gender more closely related to their sex. That's all that this thing does. Now, if we recognize that as there's nothing more diverse and varied than the human condition, then the idea that we would say that there's just one approach within the human condition that says only affirm, only support, I think that there's a problem there when we recognize that there are people that can desist. Ashley, so let me just ask you this question directly. Do you believe it would be problematic to insist on affirming the identity of a person that we knew would no longer, or that we knew would desist? Do you think that would be problematic?
Depends how you affirm it.
Affirming by providing puberty blockers, affirming their identity.
Puberty blockers.
Okay, no, that's not the question. I didn't just ask you, are you for puberty blockers? I'm saying, do you think it would be problematic?
I don't think it's problematic.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me re-ask the question, because you answered a question that I didn't ask you. So now I'm going to re-ask the question so you can actually answer the question that I asked you. So I'm going to ask it in a little bit of a different way, since it seems like you're struggling with comprehension. Do you think it would make sense? Would it be problematic? Do you think it'd be problematic if we were to provide puberty blockers or gender reaffirming psychotherapy for someone that we knew was going to desist? Do you think that would be problematic?
Puberty blockers in therapy? No.
How can you say that about puberty blockers? Like, Lupron is fucking poison.
Oh, no. It's fine. We don't have to go into that. We don't have to go into that. So you're saying, even in cases in which we know people are desist, we should still affirm that they are transgender?
So I assume you're talking about the statistic. If you mean genuinely,
I'm talking about an individual.
Then yeah, that's probably not something we should do. If we know for a fact, but the issue is we can't.
Now you can answer the question I'm asking you. Okay, good. So then the next question becomes, now that you finally answered the question I'm asking you, seems like you're really struggling with that comprehension, but we got there. Thank God. So the next question I'm going to ask then is, if we recognize that they're within the statistic, that was the next step, but I'm glad we got there. If within a statistic, we can say maybe 30-40% of people are going to desist, do you think it would be problematic to say that all 100% need to be reaffirmed and need whatever? Or do you think it would make more sense to explore other options and trying to identify factors that would be able to help us identify those who are more likely to desist, such that we would be able to give them a more proper care given their long-term
trajectory? Why can't we do both?
Well, that's my point. So you agree then we should be able to do both. You would say it's problematic that the APA has said that we cannot do both and we have to only affirm. You would say that that's a problem then.
Well, we can research it, right? I'm for more research on the...
No, not past the research stage. You just said that you think we should do both, and if the idea is that we could see... The research has already been done. The research has already been done, and if the research... Wait, you gotta jump in, Wick. The research has already been done, and the research has come back to say that a great number of them, in all the studies that I've seen, literally all the studies I've seen, the majority of them... So then if that's the case, then that means that the research has said that we didn't. Given that research, do you think it'd be appropriate for the APA to withdraw some of their mandates and instead say that therapists should be able to explore the possibility that the people that they're seeing are going to desist and see if this is something temporary as opposed to affirming?
So can I just wait? Can I please? He's talking to me. Can I please respond? Can I please respond? Okay. Basically, what I would say is that, like, we can do this on a larger level than, like, an individual therapist, right? I'd say that like what I'm answering is
I'm asking about the APA, not an individual therapist. Let's ask for about an APA.
Sorry.
APA
guidelines for individual therapists.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm saying is we should probably, right, research this more and find out possible things that might cause a trans.
You're not answering my question. I literally laid it out.
I'm trying to bring up. Okay.
No, answer my question. Then bring up whatever the frick you want to. Answer the same question I'm asking you.
Well, if you're not going to let me give a nuanced answer, then I guess I can't answer the
It's
question.
not a nuanced answer. You're literally avoiding the question for the fourth time.
I'm not avoiding the question. I'm trying to answer you.
Ashley, please go ahead.
Okay. I'm not avoiding the question. I'm trying to give you a nuanced answer, right? So what I would say is that we should still explore this, but I would say no, we shouldn't change the guidelines. It seems like there's only one way to deal with trans people, and that is affirming them, right? So I would be for affirming them. Now we can discuss something like hormones themselves, right? I would be for that discussion, but no, I would totally be for psychotherapy and puberty blockers for people that we think might detransition, because that's literally any trans person.
Can I ask a question?
I would say that what we should do is we should research why people detransition, and that's something that I support, and that's why I'm responding to. We should research why people detransition, and that's why.
And this is exactly why we got this Texas bill that we did, is because people like her and people like on the left have already made the determination that no matter what, it doesn't matter if we recognize this is going to be harmful to some children, that they're going to sit there, they're going to still ascribe the idea of reaffirming to people when we recognize that kids are detransitioning, we're recognizing some of the harm, we're recognizing the suicide rate, we don't care about any of these things, still maintain the same heavy-handed one rule for all of these different humans, despite the disparate outcomes, and that's why the GOP goes the way they do. That's why Republicans go the way they do. Because even when you ask these people, even when you ask these people about people who are going to detransition, even when you're talking about people who are desisting, you still have the same mentality that it doesn't matter if they're going to desist, it doesn't matter if they're going to detransition, it doesn't matter any of these things. Let's just go ahead and force these people to go through harmful things where we know there are long-term side effects, like puberty blockers. We're going to reaffirm them. We're going to do all of this nonsense instead of actually exploring some of the conditions, some of the indoctrination, some of the culture that could lead towards these problems, and that's what we're dealing with. So now they're at a point where they recognize you can't negotiate. You can ask direct questions, and they'll just deny, or they'll obfuscate, or they'll talk around it.
Okay.
But they'll sit there and do everything to avoid it. That's why you can't negotiate them. That's why you got to redefine things. That's why Texas responded the way they did. Yeah.
All right. Can I go now?
Can
I go now?
Shut up. Sprouticus is next. Lactoid
All right.
after that. Wick? Yeah, great. Anyone else? All right, Pepe.
All right.
So, Sprouticus.
So we're gonna have to go back a little bit because we went so far off on that tangent. So Scott, do you support conversion therapy?
Yeah.
Yes or no? You support conversion therapy?
As much as I support gender affirming care.
Okay, so
I support that both the people should have a right to do that, and that if harm is proved in that in what is going on, then we can deal with the harm that is proved.
So you should allow a harmful process, and then if harm has been able to be proved through a harmful process.
No, listen, this is the problem with the state making wide sweeping authoritarian legislation like this, is that for some people, right? For some people, they're obviously legitimately trans. Right. And if you're going to deny them any form of hormones and deny them any form of gender affirming care, or you're going to like legislate this, for the entire community, then you are actively doing harm to trans people. There's no argument whatsoever, especially when you're saying people under the age of 21, because that is an absurd and stupid fucking position that somehow these are adults that are conscious, that have a will of their own, and yet they are denied freedom to access things.
Then just break it down. Break it down to just homosexuals. Do you think there should be homosexual conversion therapy?
I think that you should have a right to do that as a parent. Yes. And I think if harm is proven in some regard because of that care, then you should be punished for that harm. I think that you should have your children taken away if you can prove that harm. And I would say the same thing about like these weirdo fucking people on TikTok that have like their 6-year-old son. And he's like, I don't want to wear the dress. And it's like, my son's my daughter. Wear the dress. It's so cute. Right. Like both of these people are fucking toxic, horrible fucking parents that are damaging their children. But there are going to be limit cases, right, where you're not able to effectively legislate this problem. So when you ban therapists that are experts with not only their client or their patient, depending on the practice, but also like in their field, and you do these sweeping legislations, some people are going to be harmed by the lack of freedom that is able to occur here.
Okay, I don't even need to debate against that. Conversion therapy has been proven to be a very, very wrong process, and no one should support conversion therapy. And just so we're all aware, in the article that includes part of the bill that says therapists, psychologists, and counselors licensed with the state of Texas shall not be forbidden or penalized by any licensing board for practicing regenerative therapy or other counseling methods when counseling clients of any age with gender dysphoria or unwanted same-sex attraction.
Yeah, no,
and you're saying you're simply saying that parents should be able to take their kid to the doctor for conversion therapy because their same-sex attraction is unwanted by the parents.
Nobody said that, and you're either too stupid to understand what I said, or you're a liar. So pick one. Are you an idiot or a liar? Pick one now.
No,
Which
you
one are you?
said parents.
Are you an idiot or a liar?
You literally said parents
are you an idiot or a liar?
You said
are you
parents
an idiot or a liar?
Guys, hold on. Can I spread a question?
All right, so we'll go on, but I'll just make it real quick. I never fucking said any of the things that you just said that I said. What I said is that there should be a freedom to practice, and that there are always extreme cases in any way, in any form of the direction, and that when you legislate these things, you make them unable to be able to help in extreme cases.
Wait, okay, so Spreadicus, so there are obviously people in this country who are religious, right? And homosexuality is like against their religious beliefs, right? So if they act on these impulses that they're having, right, they're going to go to hell or whatever the fuck it is, right? So if those people as adults went to a therapist and said, hey, I don't want to be sexually attracted to other men or to other women or whatever it is, why shouldn't they have the right to do that as adults? Now, I can agree there's maybe issues come up when dealing with children, right? And their parents forcing them through this. But if someone's an adult, right, and they have like a sexual attraction that they're uncomfortable with for any fucking reason, why shouldn't these therapists be able to assist them with that?
I think they should go to a therapist in no way, shape, or form. But I think they should go to conversion therapy, given conversion therapy's record. But I think there might be more behind that. I think their parents might have been abusive. I think someone. Or
they're just religious. Or they're religious and they think that if they act on these impulses, they're going to go to hell.
What's the difference, right?
But to being told you're wrong your entire life about something that is out of your control will cause
convert them out of their religion.
You see this in serial killers where they're being told that the way they behave or what they do is wrong their entire life, and it's an extremely abusive tactic, and it leads to great mental harm to where they feel like they're trash.
That you feel that way, but if
they
an
should
adult
be taken away from their parents.
But if an adult, hold on, but if an adult, right, if an adult has the belief for whatever fucking reason, right, that their homosexuality, their urge to fuck other men is unnatural or unholy in some way, and if they act on this, it's going to be bad for them in some way, right? Why shouldn't they have the ability to go to conversion therapy as an adult? I don't think you consent to torture. I don't think you can consent to torture. There you go.
Absolutely, there it is. And Sproticus, the answer to it is really simply, if you know something is harmful and ineffective, I think the idea that we would ever say it's okay for adults to do things that are like crazily harmful, even for themselves, which could be an act of desperation, is still problematic. The state still does have a right and a need actually to protect people from themselves. And I think just as well as I know that freaking conversion therapy is ineffective, right? And so if that's the case, then the idea that we would say no, it's totally fine for them if they want to do this, like we can see why that would be problematic.
It's not just ineffective. Just to be clear, it's not just ineffective. It's also has long-term harms, right? It's also has long-term. It's not just neutral. It's actually harmful. And I'll post a study because apparently some of us need this into the StreamYard chat if you want. But I just want to be very clear here that to act as if like look. The research is obviously not settled. This is one of the problems on the left and the right, right? This isn't a left or a right issue. It's both sides are acting as if the research is done and settled and it's settled science when it's actively not. We have not done enough research into this topic. We need more studies into desisting. We need more studies into hormone therapy. We need more information than we currently have. So to act as if the research is just done and studied is just ignorant in my opinion. 60
wait,
more.
can I ask a
That's what
question really quickly?
electoral-
So why is it that I hear Ashley, for example, she said, the best method will be gender reaffirming care. I mean, okay, but like I agree with you that the science isn't settled. Now, I mean, I can look at somebody with anorexia or bulimia. Now, to want to be thin, but yeah, I mean, it's fuck, socially,
These are
psychologically,
not
and physically, being thin's good and all, but are we going to reaffirm their need to be fucking the perfect skinny?
Of course
Like,
not.
Of
Of
course
course
not.
So
So,
I would just ask.
I just want
I
to
would
answer
ask
this
you.
question. I'll answer
if
this
you
question
have
really quick,
kids,
really
well,
concisely.
Hold on,
Really
hey,
concisely.
no,
Really
hold on.
concisely.
Hey, come on. You asked Ashley.
I think that these are fundamentally different, and when we look at transgender people, it tends to be neurobiological rather than just a mental disorder.
oh, really? How so?
There's studies that show that there's something going on with trans people's brains.
No, I mean, no. There's quote unquote studies. I've seen the studies. It's
Have you seen the meta studies that go over how certain brain parts of trans people tend to?
yeah, but I mean, there's loose correlations. There's nothing like definitive.
There's loose correlations, but there's a lot of there's a insane amount of correlation in all the research done that says this.
Okay, so
like,
do you think so? In other words, every boy or girl that wants to be of the opposite sex that's 14 years old, we should offer them gender reaffirming care. We shouldn't see like, hey,
This is
what is going to be the best fucking outcome?
well, this depends on the situation. I would say that like generally,
Well, no, it should
what the
depend on-
standards of care say is pretty fair, right? You should have to live socially as the gender that you want to be for a good amount of time, or like they recommend a year at least before you even go on puberty blockers of living as your identified gender, right? Socially. And I think that social transition is a very important part of transition. And we should always strive, especially in kids, to let them socially transition for a significant amount of time before giving them anything.
This is not first of all, there's no such thing as a male or female brain, so the correlations there are extremely loose and suggestive based off.
Why don't you think that there is?
There's not, because there isn't. We haven't, like, neuroscience is not far enough to be able to say that. Like, you can see certain slight differences, right? Like,
so you can
see
yeah,
slightly
you can see
larger amygdala.
Exactly,
amygdala,
and those slight
right?
differences
you can
are in
see
trans
slightly
people.
differences in the prefrontal cortex.
Yeah,
But you can also,
and those
but you
differences
can
are
also,
all in trans
right.
people.
Right, but you can also see massive differences in the corpus callosum of musicians. You can see massive differences with the hypothalamus in people that are London taxi cab drivers, right? So the idea isn't like the social element changes the way that the brain is perceived in functional magnetic resonance imaging. So the idea that you can then say, oh, well, see, this shows that it's a trans brain. It's like, well, there might be some correlation there, but it could also show that this person is living as a trans person, and that causes those changes. It's pseudoscientific to say that this proves that there's a trans brain in any way, shape, form, or capacity. Just admit, like everyone else here is that the data is not in, that there's relatively little.
Well, I think that the data is in here for the most part.
It's literally not. That's part of the problem. I mean, if you look, for example, like if you look at the amygdala, and you have people with certain like cluster B personality disorders, okay? And
extremely high in the trans community, by the way. NPD and BPD.
Yeah. And
sure,
so,
but that didn't.
like, you can say, like, obviously, these are going to be people that have mental illness. Yeah, but once again, these are going to be people that, because that's the region of the brain that will cause certain mood disturbances and give them an inability to have emotional regulation, right?
We don't know enough about it to make that claim.
No, but we do know that with the prefrontal cortex, that literally that you do have the malformations when it comes to cluster B personality disorders. That's a fucking fact.
Clarify, right?
Can I ask you a question?
So that's going to be borderline personality disorder, histrionic, antisocial, and narcissistic personality disorder. These are.
Can I clarify something?
Okay, clarify that. Then we're gonna Lactoid, then DB. Okay.
So even if we say this, right, like what I'm saying and what the research is saying is that there's a pretty strong correlation of certain brain stuff and being trans, right? Certain brain elements or neurobiological elements and being trans.
Same with the ADHD and schizophrenia. So what?
So we would say that this is like pretty static. Then.
Yeah, but okay. So trans people have
that's not true.
No,
That's
we
not
gotta
true.
go-
First
no,
of all,
no.
well, can I very quickly debunk the bad science that's being put out here?
Come on, no, I'm sorry. You gotta wait because Lactoid's been waiting.
All right, I'll debunk it later.
Lactoid and Doobie.
Okay, so I hate to it's not really switching topics, but just because it was a while ago. Wanted to address something that was said before. Doobie said adults should be able to, if you want whatever care you want as an adult, you should be able to. There was the idea that the government somehow should protect you from yourself. I don't agree with this concept. If I can buy cigarettes and I can buy alcohol and I can buy drugs, the idea that I can't, if I wanted to go to gay conversion therapy to become gay, or if I wanted to go to straight conversion therapy to become straight, that should be that should be entirely, as long as I'm a lucid adult who can make those decisions, I should be able to. When it gets to children, I think it is a much more difficult situation. I would agree with Fanatic a little bit that there should be more on the basis of, we should be open to the research, and we should we should not have the APA be legislating certain restrictions. I get really hesitant when it comes to medication or surgical changes, though, for children. This isn't really having to do with the mental stuff that you were mentioning, but you asked about what are the long-term ramifications of puberty blockers, and we know that there are. Right.
Yeah.
So
I wouldn't disagree with you.
Right. So there's three major ones, and one of the major ones is loss of bone density, which can lead to osteoarthritis later on in life. Major cause of mortality.
Go back to normal rates within 10 years.
So the studies I've seen haven't indicated that. I mean, if I'm open to knowledge, I suppose.
I'll see if I can get that.
Yeah, if I take a look at it
from standards of care.
Right. From what I see, it seems like long-term long-term issues with
on that. I could totally change my view on that.
Bone density. You're also a lot. Well, I'm not sure how much, but you're shorter because it causes delayed growth plate closure and also less development of genital tissue. Which, I mean,
you also forgot cancer.
So maybe cancer as well. I'm just reading off from what I was able to find.
Lactoid.
And delayed and genital tissue. We might laugh about that, but I mean, I think that for a lot of men, that's a pretty important. I mean, Fanatic talks about it all the time, right? For how big your dick is very important for a lot of men, and if that's not there, that can cause a lot of distress. I think that needs to be factored in.
So Lactoid, I'll send you the study that I found on that says that it tends to go back after 10 years. But send me all that. I actually do want to see.
Okay, so let's go to Doobie, and then Fanatic. You gotta mute yourself. We can hear you typing. So Doobie, and then Wick.
Yeah. So just to kind of touch on what Lactoid said, there are people who have like kinks, like sexual kinks, right? That make them uncomfortable, that they don't like, right? There are people that have paraphilias, like maybe they're zoophiles or some shit.
Necrosexuality.
And this makes them uncomfortable. They don't like it, so they go to a therapist and they work out ways to diminish that sexual impulse, right? I don't see this. If an adult were to go to gay conversion therapy, whatever the fuck you want to call it, I don't see it as any different than that. Right? If for whatever reason it makes them uncomfortable, they don't want it, then hey, go for it. You're an adult. I don't give a fuck. So, and then I wanted to ask actually a question. So we're talking about there being a trans brain, basically.
Yes.
So would you say that if you're saying that we can recognize them through the brain structure, would you say that puberty blockers and gender affirming care, etc., should only be given to people who have the trans brain, and people who don't have the trans brain shouldn't get access to that?
I would personally say that that's way too hard to track, or I would say that I would say that that's way too much effort being put in for an individual.
But if you're gonna
wait,
especially if you're dealing with children, right?
Come on,
that's my answer. Yeah, you probably could.
Wait, hold on. But would you support that? Especially if you're dealing with children, if you're going to give them puberty blockers and gender affirming care and totally shift their life toward this new gender that they think they might be, right? Why wouldn't you put in the effort to scan their brain and make sure they have the trans brain?
I would support that. Yeah, I would support. I would support a broader point of I would support research into if it would be consistent in kids and seeing it at early age, getting brain scans and then seeing how that turns out.
So this bias is absolutely ridiculous. You're literally saying honestly, it's just too much work, honestly. And what we're saying is, this could literally save some children's lives, right?
And
I would imagine.
I'm bringing up the issue. Wait, hold on. I would imagine. Kid is going to be very challenging.
I would imagine.
And if you are willing
to
imagine.
I would imagine suicide rates for children who were like given puberty blockers and things like that, but then did later transitioned and recognized that they made a mistake would be way, way, way higher than just typical trans people, which is already ridiculously high. So I think the idea that we would just sit here and say, like, oh, it's fine. It's a lot of work to try to determine if there's some sort of.
I'm describing that's a very expensive thing to do. If you're willing to,
isn't it just like an MRI?
You didn't say it's expensive. You just said it seemed like it's just too much work to do on an individual.
Isn't it just like
it's very expensive? I
mean, but isn't it just like an MRI?
Yeah, sure. I'm not.
But isn't it just like an MRI?
I'm not denying doing this. I'm just saying.
But I'm asking you.
It's going to be expensive. But if you're willing to do it, then yes.
Okay, so it's literally an MRI appointment, right? Scanned by the MRI machine, and I think it's fucked up. Can you hear me?
Yeah, kind of. You're like lagging a bit, but we could.
Is that better?
I think it takes a bit more than an
MRI.
You're better.
They got to scan you.
Yeah. So my understanding
for the girl brain.
Specific parts of the brain. And
So they scan your brain with the MRI, and then they go through whatever scans they have to determine if you have the trans brain, basically, right? So if that's what the effort is, and the benefit is we don't accidentally give puberty blockers and gender affirming care and whatnot to a child who isn't actually trans. Right. And we know that it's going to have like long-term effects on their life, right? Socially, mentally, physically. And why wouldn't you say that if you don't have the trans brain, if we can identify trans people by their brain, then you don't get the access to this stuff?
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm just saying that like dealing with the looking into somebody's biology is very expensive. And again, what I'm saying is I'm not against that. I'm just not sure that we want to put that money towards trans people in the US.
But years of
but it's based off of pseudoscience.
Hypothetically, if we were willing to, then yeah.
It's based
off
of pseudoscience.
I'm not sure that that's a position that you could get supported.
I'm asking you to support
even
it.
If you could, you would still not have any, like, you can't ethically do, like, the only way that you could do a study to like really hone this down with like a high enough probability is you'd have to recreate Money's experiments. You'd have to like forcibly trans children, and then you'd have to like forcibly put them in sex acts and like let them kill themselves and like go through all of that torture. And then you'd have to have a control group, and then you'd have to have another group so that you could see the differences here, so that you could actually even tell if the social portion of social transition is what is causing some of these changes. You literally cannot ethically do that study. And so the problem is that you're dealing off of guesswork, off of new science, which is us looking at specific parts of it's like neuroscience.
I'm just asking. I'm asking for you. Like, what's new science? I'm just trying to clarify terms.
Okay, well, psychology in and of itself is less than 100 years old, right?
Okay, so what is new science to you? 100 years? I'm just clarifying.
No, when was the first time we started using functional magnetic resonance imaging? Was like, I want to say like the early 80s, I believe.
Okay,
wait,
what is new science? That's all.
So Scott, do you consider something like ADHD not valid because it's new science?
That's in what world? No, pause. Like I'm not even going to deal with that.
Can I give you an example?
Right? You're attacking the idea of new science. But what I'm trying to say is that we don't have like sci-fi fucking technology to really be able to tell what's going on in the brain. What we have is guesswork from the iron content when we look at specific images and when we do certain things, or just from general brain activity. And that when we do the MRI, we can see blood flow to certain parts of the brain and then try and map out the size of the structures, the activity in those structures. It is a lot of fMRIs are already, even though they've been amazing to psychology and given us a lot of insights, it's already a bit of guesswork in dealing with fMRIs anyways, beyond the ethical constraints of being able to actually do this study as an empirical, like using the empirical method, right? Or the scientific method, because you can't, like, you're doing correlational study. You're not, the data doesn't separate social transitioning. And then you're talking about what is and isn't a female brain, despite this being a distribution and not like actual male female brain parts. Like,
you
it's
calling,
absurd.
But you calling this new science and basically saying it's just guesswork is disingenuous at best. Scientists are.
You just don't understand what I'm saying.
Stop. Scientists are able to realize what part of the brain does what via studying the brain, via MRIs, via all of that. They're able to decide what part of the brain does what. They're able to see the difference in an ADHD brain and a non-ADHD brain. They're able to see all of this. You calling this new science and saying that it's it's just fucking guesswork is disingenuous at best.
No, you
I think you're
literally just don't
misunderstanding what
understand
he
the
said.
science at all, right? Like, yes, we can use fMRIs to study quite a number of things, right? That doesn't mean that we understand exactly how all those things work. For example, cognitive psychologists still have zero fucking idea how memory recollection works. It's all fucking guesswork and theory at this point. We
Let's
know
go to
HPA
Wick.
axis is involved.
Let's go to Wick.
That's
Wick.
about
Wick.
it.
Wick has been
So
waiting.
I really want to move away from this because it's quite frankly I'm not familiar with the neuroscience enough to make a valid opinion for this, right? But I do not think we need neuroscience, right, to talk about whether we should provide gender affirming healthcare to kids. I think this is an issue that we can discuss without going into whether there are male brains or female brains, right? Because we do have data on it, and again, we don't have complete data; it's not finished research, but the data that we have seems to suggest, the preponderance of data seems to suggest that while yes, there are some issues and outliers with puberty blockers and things like that that may occur and do occur in some cases, that when we do provide them to children to affirm, in a vast majority of cases, it does reduce suicidality rate. It does have a beneficial effect that outweighs the potential negative effects. We can see this, we can say this, again, not with like 100% certainty, but with a good degree of certainty. And so that's how we go off with that's how we react to
Wick
is
right. Okay, I love it, Wick. So then you also agree with the majority of research that we can say with pretty solid certainty that the vast majority of children who identify as transgender, they will no longer be dysphoric or transgender by the time that they're adults, right? So
to be very honest with you, I'm not super familiar with detransitioning research, so I can't give you a.
Also, the suicidality rates only show a decrease after they've gone through gender affirming care. Okay. And here's the ugly truth that no one wants to admit.
Is part of gender affirming care.
Okay. Yes, we have HRT research. We also have gender reassignment research, right? Now, here's the problem. Okay. And no one wants to admit it, but it's just a fucking fact. Society treats ugly people poorly. And when you start transitioning, you become fucking ugly. And as you begin to pass more, you look better. Okay. That's just a fucking fact. Ashley over here is a very cute girl to almost anyone walking down the street. Pretty sure she didn't look like that when she started her transition. That's just a fucking fact.
Earlier when we first started this topic, one of the things I didn't want to mention or get into was Texas was stating how they were going to not, fund transitioning care, whatever, and there are many ethical reasons for why I will struggle with it. Number one, you can be an ugly fucking person, like ass ugly. And if you got, I don't know, some kind of facial surgery, orthodontistry, any fucking cosmetic surgery, really.
What's with this ugly?
Make somebody not want to fucking, hold on. You can make somebody not want to fucking kill themselves. No, I'm dead serious, and boost somebody's fucking self.
Certainly, when people feel better about themselves, they get less suicidal.
Sure. I agree. But hold on. But why would you prioritize the gender reaffirming care over other such cases? To me, that doesn't make fucking sense. And when it comes
what cases do you think that the gender affirming care is taking the place of? Who is not
dealing with OCD?
Who is not
or helping them align with their gender that was assigned to them at birth? I think that's probably the main one right there, right? Like, why couldn't they do that instead in some of these cases where we recognize these people?
We can have a discussion about that because again, there is valid arguments there to say.
Yes, you're right, and that is the discussion because that's in this thing. The thing that we just read, that was number 4 specifically, that psychologists cannot be prevented or banned from doing this type of research.
There's so many other problems with this, right? Like they cannot be prevent. I believe that again. I just scanned this honestly, and I'd have to go back through it. And
okay, well you don't retreat to other problems. Do you agree with that position or not?
Do I agree with that specific position or not? I don't. I'm not researched enough to give an educated opinion on this. To be quite frank.
Okay, well I get it.
Hey, can I bring something up really quickly, please?
But
So,
my overall
oh,
point, just
God.
real quick, and I'll be very concise. My overall point is that no one is losing, like, ugly people aren't losing access to surgery because there's a HRT and things like that. I think that's a ridiculous
Yeah,
position.
nobody made
No,
that
no,
claim.
no.
That's
Ugly
not
people
what
didn't
anybody-
have access to surgery to begin with, right? But people who want gender reaffirming care have gained access.
For the love of God, I'm not trying to be mean. It's gender affirming care.
Gender affirming care, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, can I just make a point really quickly? So to kind of back up what Fanatic and Scott were saying. So Sweden is one of the most progressive places on the planet, right? Especially when it comes to like LGBT shit, trans shit, especially, even with children, right? For years. And recently, they've redone their guidelines and they're going to be massively restricting puberty blockers and gender affirming care for people under the age of 18. Right, because of the issues with desistance, because of the issues with autistic kids, getting fixated on the idea of their gender identity and getting dysphoria, but not actually being trans, and these kids might have been treated some other way if they didn't go through the gender affirming care and the HRT and all this kind of shit. Because of the long term issues that come with like puberty blockers, etc. Right, so to say that, hey, the science is settled, and or that it's like widely accepted that this is the best way to go is really silly. Right. I posted it in the group chat for you guys. Like, this is the most progressive place in the world, and they're massively restricting this. Right. So it's not like, I think there's like an undercurrent here, right, where people tend to imply that if you're against like if you're against like trans children, etc., right, you just like hate trans people, or you don't want them to exist, right? And it's just like nonsense, right? I think everybody would hear that, would agree that trans people do exist, right? Some of them are trans. You're just trans, and that's okay. Right? You need to get help. That's fine. What we're talking about is that there's a social contagion aspect here that is not addressed enough, that is dismissed by many people on the left, right? That we don't get to talk about, and it leads to a lot of kids who are not actually trans, identifying as trans, and some of these kids get pushed into gender affirming care and HRT and shit when they shouldn't be.
Super interesting article.
And I think that's what the Republican Party is reacting to with this kind of legislation.
These conclusions in the study you posted are pretty groundbreaking, actually.
Yeah, and
the
they have
research is just being done, right? Like the research is just being done.
I don't think I fundamentally disagree with anything in here.
Like the point that I would like to bring this back to, right? And maybe people will just laugh and meme at me for it, but
is it about
really
the state?
It's really a violation of individual rights for us to unilaterally support one form, either conversion therapy or gender affirming care. Like people should have the right to do what they think is in the best interest of their children. Because although we're talking about situations like, let's say, for example, in California, where like 40% of Gen Z are identifying as LGBTQAI+, right? Like that's obviously a social element that is playing a role there. And there is grooming that is occurring in schools, and anybody that denies that is absurd, right? Like we just have facts of that happening. Now, to what degree it's occurring, that's different. There's a lot of grooming that happens online and in Discord. Listen to detrans people's stories and talk about the way.
Stop using this word. It has very specific meaning, and when we extend it and extrapolate it, like if you call everything a groomer that you don't like, it ceases to use meaning.
Okay,
just
well
like
then I'll give you a definition. I'll give you a definition. I'll give you a definition. Here's my overarching definition, that in order for it to be grooming, you need to attempt to indoctrinate someone into a different philosophy that goes against the values of their parents, and you must triangulate them from their parents. You must affirm them during that triangulation process. You must give them the recognition that they are special for it. And I think if you do all of those things to indoctrinate someone into a religion or to an ideology or into something that goes against the values of their parents, while triangulating them from their parents, love bombing them, and then telling them to keep it a secret, that's fucking grooming. Regardless, the issue here is that there's going to be limit cases no matter what is going on. So if we take a transgender, for example, there's gonna be, like, I think all of us know a kid that was like a toddler, and like you just knew that kid was like just different. Like immediately, like you were just like, even before they spoke, you know what I mean? Like my daughter, like she does these cutesy things when she gets in trouble. And like my son is just like a tank that just like knocks shit over. Like there's gendered behavior that we haven't put in them. right?
Like
And
that's
you
the
can-
worst definition of grooming I've ever heard. To
Okay,
be very
cool.
clear,
That's that's
broad,
cool.
that's so broad you can fit almost anything in under that.
Yeah,
And
I
it
highly
loses
doubt that.
any of its
That's
if
stupid.
its
Anyways,
of its ability.
we get it.
to
You don't like the
communicate an
definition.
idea.
I'm going to use the word.
Yeah,
no
it's a
matter what
terrible
anyways.
because it's a terrible definition. Yes.
What's
Okay,
your
it's a great
definition of
whatever
definition,
word
but
you
anyways.
like.
No,
and I
no,
can
wait,
call
wait,
you
what's
stupid
your
because of it.
better
But
definition of
but no,
grooming?
So,
like
I refer
it's
to
not
it very
worth listening to him try and give a definition. I'll be very quick. We know that there are going to be kids, right, that insist their whole life from like 2 on that they feel like a different gender, that they play with their gender, that they want to express themselves in a way that is more feminine or masculine, that they don't have comorbid issues that we could tie to fixation like OCD, ADHD, autism, things like that. And those kids deserve to go to therapy, deserve to speak to a therapist and go through multiple sessions. And the therapist will be like, look, this kid clearly is gender dysphoric and there's no comorbidity. There's no other explanation. That's what this kid is. And they should have a right to if the parents feel that it's right, they should have a right to hormones. They should have a right to puberty blockers. They should have a right to socially transition. And you shouldn't have to wait until you're 21. It's an authoritarian measure to try and stop this radical gender ideology that's sweeping. And it's the wrong answer. It's wrong.
Powerful.
Yeah.
So Scott, so
Is
you're
it-
in the right-wing authoritarian measures, right?
What's that? Are these right-wing authoritarian? I mean, like, presumably, like, I don't want to get into a definition of right and left wing, but like, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sure. I mean, I do think that Republicans, you have right-wingers that are overreactionary, obviously.
That's exactly what this is.
And yeah, totally. And so I'm one of those people who I look at a lot of people on the right, and I won't get into it, but it's kind of ironic because a lot of these people end up getting into conspiracy theories and taking like shit stances just to like basically own the other side, and which is something I always have to contend with other right wingers about.
Look, there's
Ashley, you had
no
your hand up.
argument.
Did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
It should be 18, not
It,
21.
right? Like,
I just
well,
got so
like tribalism is a problem. I don't disagree. Tribalism is a huge issue, especially when it comes to issues that are sensitive, like racism, gender identity issues, things like that. We act as if we are so certain of our answers, and that we have to toe the party line 100%, or we're heathens, and we should be put up against the wall or sent to camp or something. It is crazy, and it is a problem. I'll agree with you there. Tribalism is a huge issue here.
Yeah, and I think it leads to a lot of people on the left defending drag queen kid fucking strip shows and shit.
It's not going to lick
Or
itself,
saying
dude.
things or saying things like, "Hey,
Yeah.
being gay
Anyone
isn't
who
abnormal," when
bringing
it
a child
clearly
to a strip
is.
show there's a problem with that. But let's not conflate. One of the problems here is we conflate things like drag queen story hour with drag queen strip show, and they're not the same thing. And
Well,
let's
drag
not
queen
pretend
story
they're
hour
the
is just as fucking bad.
So-
I think it's also
problematic.
They're not conflated.
We'll fight on this issue later.
Prime, I will
Ashley,
literally destroy you on this issue. Okay.
So wait,
I'm
can
gonna
I ask
fucking
you a
arrest you,
question?
Ashley.
So do you at least
No.
agree that when it comes to, I've seen Drag Queen Story Hour. I'm not a fan of it, but at least obviously these are caricatures of women. They're not sexual in any sense. However, you do see like what we saw. What was it, like 2-3 weeks ago? Like in Texas, where there's basically a fucking burlesque show with drag queens and trans women. Like, to me, that crosses a line. Like, it crosses a line if you allow your kid to go to a fucking burlesque.
Hold on.
Hold on. That would be clear.
I am
No,
saying
that wasn't
hey,
even-
shut up. I am saying that we can talk about that on the panel. If you want to do that, we can, right? But like, I want to finish up on this thing, right? We have a very limited amount of time. So, Ashley, did you have anything else you wanted to say? It's been you against the world.
I was just gonna comment on the idea that like my ex-girlfriend detransitioned, right? There's a while where she thought that she was gonna be a guy, right? And she didn't transition, and she still supported the community entirely. So I think that like acting like detransitioners are a monolith where they've been groomed into this is like bad. I think towards the end Scott pulled it back from that. But I just thought it would also clarify that there definitely are detransitioners that don't think that it's like some grooming that got them into it. They just decided that wasn't for them.
No, I'm not arguing.
Sure.
Yeah, but I'm not.
Yeah, no,
arguing
I
that
think you
they're a
clarified it
monolith.
by the end, which is why I put my hand down. So I'm
Like
clarifying.
what we need to do is we need to support freedom, but we also need to recognize that there is a movement, an ideology that has infected the AMA, infected the APA, infected universities.
Yeah, but
that is one. It's very simple. It's neo-Marxian philosophy that is just the same as critical race theory, critical theory, critical
I don't
legal
think he knows what
studies,
Marxian
critical
means.
Scott,
theory,
I have a question
critical
for you.
He doesn't know what
pedagogy.
Marxist means.
Scott, I have a question for you. I genuinely believe, right? This is definitely true, right? I would never lie. I genuinely, suddenly believe that every world organization is lying to me, and the Earth is flat.
Okay.
And that we as a government should make a commission specifically for researching the flat Earth, right?
What about it?
Yeah. So that's fine. Do you see no issues with that? You see no issues with
Why would I?
every science, all the science that we've done, and all the provable things that you can, like.
If you want to, if you genuinely believe the world is flat and you want to go waste your fucking money and you want to go do your own fucking research and make YouTube videos, hey, you know what, Ashley? You are going to be the biggest fucking thing Flat Earth has ever seen. You're a fucking adorable trans girl that's Flat Earth. Like, you're going to get so many fucking views. Make all that fucking money. Okay?
Yeah.
Go and do it. Do you. If you want to use my tax paying dollars for that dumb shit, go fuck yourself.
Actually,
That's
and I
my
think
answer.
the bigger problem in that is that, like, one thing you're talking about, like, hey, like, this is something I believe and I want to do this research. I mean, again, I want to waste some government money on this research, but I think there's a very big difference between that and when we're talking about, like, literally protecting children who are literally being forced into this ideology that doesn't actually benefit them, that's going to be incredibly harmful, where we know the suicide statistics and all of these sorts of things, and we're saying, like, hey, maybe we might want to put a pause on some of this stuff. Maybe some of these cases are abusive. Maybe some of these times that the therapist should be allowed to explore realigning these people with their gender. Maybe some of these times these people are not actually trans. Maybe some of the time that these things are socially engineered, right? Some of these cases, but instead we have a heavy-handed APA that just says, nope, across the board, there's only one way of dealing with this, and it's a problem, right? Especially when you start talking about these are literally going to be altering children's lives. And then when you find really hyper progressive countries like Sweden, I'm grateful for Doobie bringing that up. He always does. When you find those countries actually dialing things back, recognizing, like, hey, mate, there are some actual problems with puberty blockers. We are seeing some long-term conditions that can develop from these things. And when we start seeing these things, and we're saying, wait a minute, so you guys were advocating for us doing these experimental things on children, and not even researching the fact that there's these long-term effects on it. I don't even know how you would do the research. Well, actually, you could have done the research, but it would have taken a longer time, because the original reason why puberty blockers were originally prescribed were for other things, such as like early puberty, like puberty found in 7-year-olds and 6-year-olds and things like that. And they found ways of actually doing that. That was a reasonable thing to do, to say, hey, this is a little early for puberty. There's going to be other harms and problems from this. So let's wait and hold off on that. That made sense. But now that we're starting to do it for these elective things, for transgenderism, when we know that the vast majority of kids, I'll say, yes, I'm calling it elective specifically. Okay. The reason why I'm calling it elective is because there are plenty of cases in which people could go without puberty blockers, and they would not be prevented from being trans. They could still be just as trans when they're 18 years old. They could still go ahead and get whatever surgeries and everything else that needs to happen at 18 years old. So it's elective, right? Because there are plenty of trans people who have lived healthy lives.
But there's a reason. I just want to
without that. I'm going to finish my point. So my point being, that when we can see that there's harm being done to kids, and the vast majority of research all support the idea that the vast majority of kids are not actually trans, even the ones who identify as trans, prepubescent children who identify as transgender are no longer transgender by the time they're adults. If the vast majority of research supports this, then any heavy-handed thing saying we only have one way of dealing with this, which is to reaffirm that they're trans, is problematic, because now these are entire livelihoods of people that are actually being lost. There's a big old cost. We recognize how often the pharmaceutical industry benefits off of all these things. We've seen what the war on drugs is. We've seen what the new the opioid addiction, what that crisis has been. We've seen how evil this pharmaceutical industry can be, and the fact that they're benefiting off of trans children, it seems like something we ought to put more pause to. But people like you in this conversation have proven that you don't care.
But Fanatic, the Sweden points, I don't disagree with any of them, right? I don't think any of them really disagree with what I'm saying. It's putting psychological care before puberty blockers. When have I advocated for that? When have I advocated against that? I literally said that I think you should be demonstrating this for at least a year before anything is done. And that's what
Hold
they're
on,
saying.
But then you would still go on to do puberty blockers, whereas Sweden
Hold on, to
said
be clear.
no.
There's a real issue here.
To be
There's a
clear,
real
it's putting psychological care before gender affirming care.
Yeah, and I'm for
meaning
that.
that they're not gonna affirm the gender of these children right away, right? It's they're gonna start doing it. They're gonna allow it to be available to children who've had gender dysphoria, starting I think at before the age of 8. I'm sorry, when they were like prepubescent, and it has to have gone on for 5 years. That's when they
Yeah,
start
I'm
gender
not
affirming.
necessarily against that. I'm not against that.
So one of the issues
That
here,
you need to
when
do
it
that in the
comes to
States, but you know we
children,
don't do that with the APA,
and
right?
especially when it comes to things like there was a recent rules change in the swimming world, which signified that if you wanted to be trans and compete in swimming events, you have to be on puberty blockers before a certain age, right? I think the age was 12, if I remember off the top of my head. When you go through puberty, it has effects, right? It has long-term effects that are really hard to deal with after they require a lot of surgery. And even then, you can't 100% get rid of these effects, right? And that's why to have access, it's a time limit here. There's a time limit where if they don't get this access to this care in enough time before they hit puberty, there's going to be consequences. And so that there's a risk there that we have to take it. They're going to lose access.
But
to certain
Wick, on the other
opportunities.
side, everything we know about children who don't get access to this, who identify as trans, right? Up to 98% of those kids are not trans in 5 years.
Okay,
right? Are not
but
trans
I'm
when they
not
go through
talking about
puberty.
surgery.
So
I'm talking about
if
puberty
that's what you're
blockers.
worried about, right? It's
I'm
like
talking
a
about
it's
puberty blockers
it's like a
Yo,
it's like a trolley
real
problem,
quick.
right? We have 9 kids laying on one side and 1 kid laying on the other.
Yo, real quick. I, of anyone in the entire Twitch space, talk about this more than anyone. I have interviewed D-trans people, interviewed Buck Angel. I talk about this shit all of the time, watching band videos. That 98% is like really disingenuous, but like I get what you're saying. It's probably closer.
Yeah,
to
it's up to 98%.
Yeah, like that 98% study is literally like, did you come in for a session and then like you didn't come in for a second session, therefore you're a desister, right? Like, whereas like that's just not what's going on, right?
And again,
so is the
like
2.7% number.
I'm not
that
talking
you hear
about
all the time, too.
surgery.
Yeah,
I'm not
that's a
talking
bullshit
about
number as well.
any kind of a gender affirming surgery. I'm talking about specifically puberty blockers and providing access to puberty blockers to children of prepubescent age. If this is what the psychologists show that this is what they want, and this is what will help them, I think providing access to that care is important.
Right, but you have to understand the swing that is occurring, right? This is a right-wing reaction to insanity in the other direction, right? Like in the UK, for example, like you can go to a gender clinic, and if you've got like 100 pounds, or sorry, 400 pounds, I think is what it was, you can get both of your diagnosis and get your androgen therapy right then, right there. And this is happening in a lot of states in the US as well, where they're not following any guidelines whatsoever, and where individuals are getting their opinion and their second opinion and getting 2 diagnoses on the first session. Like in every other instance, what would occur in every other instance, you would like people don't give any diagnoses in one session. What they do is they give you like acute trauma, right? So that they have an ICD-10 code that they can like bill your insurance for, because they want to do like a good solid session, 12 sessions before they or at least a couple of sessions. And then through those 12 or 20 sessions, depending on like if it's CBT, RBT, or if it's something else like psychoanalysis to years or some shit, right? Like depending on what you're doing. And so like there is an extreme corruption that is occurring in the APA and the AMA that I would argue is damaging to trans people, because the pseudoscience is not effectively studying what is occurring so that trans people can get the healthcare that they need. And instead, what we're doing is we're pushing an ideology that gender is a social construct, that heteronormativity is a bad thing. The APA has all these guidelines on toxic masculinity that go insanely far. These institutions have become corrupt to the point where they can't even help trans people, much less kids that are not trans but have fixation issues that need to be worked on. And so you're getting a right-wing authoritarian like shift that's reacting to this, because they're going, I don't know what's going on. Shut it all down. Fuck everything, right? Like when you see a movie and like something gross happens and you're like, burn it with fire. I don't want to see it anymore. That's what the right is doing here in Texas. And it's too fucking far and it's hurting people. But we have to recognize the issue that's causing this.
Wait, don't you agree that like puberty blockers could have like concerning long-term effects that
if
with
taken
children
over a long period of time?
Well, with children specifically, like I don't know, like there's just
we give
such a higher
blockers
standard.
to children for non-transitioning reasons, right? You know that happens.
Right, I understand it happens, and I think, man, like it's difficult because, like I'm so skeptical on like interfering on children, right? Because I mean they don't have the capacity to like consent to medical intervention.
They don't have.
And-
They're emergent adults. They don't have a fully formed will to be able to consent.
Yeah, they're not able to consent, right? And so you have to like you have to factor this one with every single like operation that's done. And so like the question
Again, I'm not talking operations.
so
We're talking hormone blockers and puberty blockers.
Well, sure, but it's all okay. I agree with you that like surgery is like the next step, and that's like I think that's maybe like too extreme
I would agree.
for a lot of people, right?
Surgery 18 plus. I think that's a
okay.
18 plus.
18 plus. Okay, we agree on that for sure. But and I think hormones for sure 18 plus. Like,
but puberty blockers are reversible, right? Like you could stop taking
the damage is not reversible from puberty.
So there are.
I don't think that's
there's
true.
arguably
that's pseudoscience.
There's arguably there's like been a little bit of debate.
Okay, just real quick. I'll let you finish, Lactose. But Scott, you just made a claim. Back it up. Put up or shut up, please.
It's very simple. Like you can't reverse.
All you need is a study. One. All I need is one.
After the panel, if you want me to send you the studies on I actually Lactoid was already bringing up studies that he can send you. Like there's damage that is done by Lupron specifically, but also like GRNH antigen therapy has all types of things, increased cancer risk, delayed formation of certain tissue, a lot of bone issues. And on top of that, like you're also only talking about physical damage and you're not talking about the psychological practice of delayed puberty. I mean, like we have a ton of research that shows that early puberty in girls, like precocious puberty in girls can be very damaging socially and psychologically, as well as late puberty, especially late puberty for boys can be psychologically damaging and occur all kinds of psychological effects.
Okay,
but these do not outweigh the damage that is done when you do not provide this access, and they do end up being trans individuals, and now it's too late. You can't go back in time. You can't reverse puberty. You cannot do that. You can,
for now,
to some extent, reverse. If we are living in sci-fi land where we have medical practices that can reverse puberty, right, I would change my stance. Okay, but we don't live in that world, right?
Wick. So I think we got to draw like three lines here, right? So there's like puberty blockers. There's like hormones like HRT, and then you have and others, and then you have like surgery, right? I mean, I think we've already said like surgery 18 plus, right? HRT, there's a tremendous amount of side effects when you look into that, right? Like stroke risk, I think is most worrisome, right? Stroke risk increases multiple fold for people who are on long-term HRT. And then you have at the bottom, which seems so far to have the least amount of observable side effects, is puberty blockers. There still are some side effects, right? Like decreased bone density, decreased genital tissue, and overall shorter height. There's some, obviously, because it's relatively, there's some like long-term side effects that they're concerned about that they don't necessarily know, obviously, as with every medication. But at the end of the day, like osteoporosis is really serious, and like can make, especially like late life, can like make your life like pretty bad. I think that this really needs to be contended with. I agree with you that in a situation that we've analyzed somebody and like, okay, we need to help them, otherwise they're gonna like commit suicide. Sure, right? But like, we need to have strict standards. It can't be what I see a lot of people, and I think what the reaction is coming from the Republican side. I mean, I see people advocating on Twitter to get this shit off like the Russian websites and shit, like get that mailed to your house. This cannot, right? This can't be acceptable. It just can't be.
I think one of the solutions to that is make it more easily accessible when we have a country where we do have the FDA and things like that, where we do have the government that is involved in regulating these products. Yes, one of the dangers of getting it off Russian websites and things like that is the deregulated nature of it, and it can cause harm. And I think that's a terrible thing as well. I just do not think the solution is to restrict access. I think the solution is to expand access. And yes, I will throw you a bone here. I'll build a bridge with you that I think some people do go too far, right? Like I do think that's the case, but that does not excuse the massive overreaction of the Texas GOP here. That is just inexcusable in every facet of the way I can think of. I'm sorry. I'm
Which part of it is an
stumbling over the word,
overreaction?
right? Well, for example, the conversion therapy thing was bullshit. That's bullshit
Why?
entirely, right? Not restricting doctors from or therapists or whoever from performing conversion therapy. We know that's torture. We know it's torture.
Hold on, we don't know it's torture. Well, I asked
We
you the same
do. I
question I asked
provided a
Sprout.
study
Right,
within
so if
the
an adult wants to
Okay, I
limit or reduce some kind of
there's
sexual
no benefits
proclivity
to
they
it.
have,
Plenty of
is it torture for them to want to go through conversion therapy or to have like go to therapy to reduce that impulse?
conversion therapy is a form of torture. Yes.
What if I'm
Wait,
kinky
what
and I
if-
want to get whipped? Is that like torture?
Yeah,
Am I not allowed to do
if
that?
I'm a woman?
Conversion therapy.
What if I'm a woman and I've
torture.
internalized the patriarchy so much, I just like getting choked and beaten up all the fucking time, and it's hurting me at work because I'm coming with like bruised like eyes and shit all the time. Like, should that woman not be able to have access to therapy to reduce that sexual impulse?
The access to therapy to reduce that sexual impulse? Sure,
Yeah.
but that's not
Disorders.
conversion therapy, right? That's not changing their sexuality entirely. There's a different thing.
Wait,
here.
hold
There's
on.
difference in scope and
Why is
difference
it why
in
is it
scale.
so important to you that whether you're gay or straight that you have the gay sex or the straight sex? Right?
It's
that
not.
you're
If
like,
you choose to be abstinent, either as a straight person
well,
or
this
a
is
gay
what these
person, that's
people
fine.
do. A lot of people who go through conversion therapy who are like religious, like Christians, right? Typically, go to conversion therapy because I think my Discord's fucking up. Can you guys hear me?
I can
Yes.
Yeah,
do
we
it.
can hear you.
Okay, so they go through this because they'd like to reduce the impulse because they feel like if they act on the impulse, they're going to go to hell, right? So you can say, hey, well, that's not true. You know, God isn't real, et cetera, et cetera. These are religious people you're talking about, right? So you're either going to convert
if
them out of
they're
their
right?
religion, or you're going to let them go to this fucking thing, so
You know,
they're not living
even-
with the
It's about
dread every day of their dick
purity
getting
of
hard
force
around
and
the wrong
Wait,
guy. and
wait.
he,
I'm a Christian. Wait, I'm a Christian, and this was brought up in chat. No, you don't torture someone because they sin different.
It's
You're
not
not. You're,
torture.
no, but you're not going to torture somebody because they lie. You're
The
not going
Bible
to
says to
torture
kill them.
somebody. No, you don't torture someone because they sin different. Sorry.
Well, hold on. The Bible says to like stone them to death,
If
right?
you're like,
That's in
But,
the Old Testament. That's not regarded
okay.
in normal Christianity. No.
Oh,
We're not
okay.
about
Oh, wait,
that
hold on.
religious
Jews.
debate here,
So
but I
hold on.
would
So
say
somebody,
there's a
wait. So Spartacus,
difference,
if somebody's like just like
Orthodox Jews.
they
How
have
about
like a fucked up childhood
Oh,
and
shit.
they're like a serial rapist now, right? So that person not have the ability to go to some kind of therapy to deal with that
Not
because
they're a
it's really, like,
serial
reducing their
rapist?
sexual. Yeah.
Yes, they should have therapy to deal with that. And there is
Okay, so
no,
some sexual impulses might be-
but wait, there is therapy outside of conversion therapy, which has been proven to have extremely negative long-term effects on someone's
if
mental
you're-
health. It
if
has been
you're-
proven.
if
This
you're
isn't something that
conversion
hasn't been
therapy, we
proven.
aren't just talking about
If you're
therapy
dealing
in
with a
general. Conversion
sexual
therapy is a
impulse
very
that you don't want to
specific
have,
thing.
every fucking your life's gonna be difficult if you're trying to suppress.
There's other
these things.
therapy
Like
besides
that.
conversion therapy that you can use. Conversion therapy has been proven to have extremely negative long-term effects, and it has been compared to torture.
Well, hold on, but the
Ironically.
Listen, someone that actually knows how this fucking research works.
Which ain't you. So let's move on to whoever actually knows, okay?
I know how.
Which ain't
like,
you.
Wow.
You've demonstrated that again and again on this panel. I just want to be that
Look,
clear.
I don't think.
I can guarantee you that I've read more of this research than you.
Yeah, look, I think-
and
I
your
think
guarantee is
Scott's,
worth,
like, more
you
well-read
know,
on this
I
than
can
you
shit on one hand, you
I mean,
guarantee
Wick,
the other.
Wick,
We'll see
you
which
Anyways,
one
admitted
wins.
earlier.
let
Wick,
me
you admitted earlier
let me
that you don't know a
explain
lot about
this.
this topic, right? So, like, why
I
would you
don't
even
know
say
a
that?
lot
No,
about very
look.
specific things like desysting, for example.
No,
I
listen
don't
to
know
me.
a lot.
Listen to me. There's a problem with the research on conversion therapy, right? And that is that the overwhelming majority of people that have gone through conversion therapy have been harmed by it. It is not efficacious in the overwhelming majority of the population, right? Now, number one, we're talking about a deontological or natural law position of whether or not people should have the right to do so. And you're talking about a consequentialist position about if there is presented harm most of the time, then I say you don't have that right to do so because it tends to do more harm than good. But what I am trying to explain, I've been trying to explain, is that there are outliers. So, for example, feminist therapy tends to not be very efficacious. Feminist therapy is a specific form of therapy that is designed to deal with usually women, right, and engage them in political activism, engage them in knowledge and education of feminism and the patriarchy and things like this.
Poetry.
More often than not, that is a horrible fucking therapy. However, for women that have been abused and have gone through intimate partner violence, it has been shown to be very efficacious because it allows them to chant, like whether or not I like it politically and what it does in the political landscape, it allows them to empower themselves. It allows them to transition some of the feelings of self-hatred that they have onto something else, which is like a system, and engage in politics,
so the question
et cetera, et
is very
cetera.
simple then, Fabian. Are there other therapies that do not have the negative consequences in the non-outlier positions that would be just effective for these group of people?
That's
I don't
not,
know
that's
off the
you,
top of
no,
my
you
head,
don't
but
know.
that is a question. So if you have a medicine or a therapy or something that is
No,
benign,
you don't know what you're
generally,
talking about. Let me finish. right?
obviously,
Like,
I have demonstrated more on this panel than you have here, Fabian.
no, you
have
literally don't.
again and again.
You probably
shown
never
your
even
ignorance.
heard of fucking
No, that's
Shown
feminist
your
therapy.
ignorance just again and again and again,
Now,
over
listen,
and over
no.
and over. How many
Hold on,
times
okay.
do we have
Major-
to you
no,
hear,
the
listen
major-
to your
the major-
ignorant take
The major
before we
avenues.
recognize
You
we
cannot
don't
just
have to
keep
listen to
fucking
you anymore
filibustering that I'm
because you are
ignorant because you have no
plainly
Hey,
arguments
Wick,
against it.
like Wick, hold
Listen.
on, Wick. We understand you don't think his opinion is valuable, Wick. That's okay, but let him finish, please.
Right. Like, listen, the major
Not
branches of therapy, the
not
major
all night,
branches,
we're already overtime,
the
dude. I
major,
don't
the
have
major,
another
the, ma-
hour to listen
the
to
major,
Bam
will you
Wan.
shut the fuck up, dude? The major
Dude,
branches
you
of
know,
therapy.
you just shut the fuck
Wick,
up. Stop.
Wick,
Oh my god. Oh, okay.
You're-
Okay,
Wick.
hold on. Finish your point so that we can
the major branches, right? The major branches of therapy are cognitive behavioral therapy, rational emotive, psychoanalysis, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, narrative therapy, feminist therapy. Most other therapies are going to be outliers. They're going to be rare forms of therapy without a lot of research backing them up. Okay. Or they're going to be some form of like subsection of like, cognitive based, like trauma informed mindfulness based cognitive therapy or something for PTSD, right? Like when you're talking about conversion therapy, you're talking about something totally different, or reintegration therapy, which is what we're talking about here. New name, same shit, right? You're talking about someone that has a stated goal. And what you're disagreeing with is the stated goal. You're not actually disagreeing with the psychotherapy itself and the processes that are used in the psychotherapy.
Yeah, don't
You're
tell me what I'm
disagreeing.
not disagreeing with here,
Oh.
right? Like if someone
All
wants,
right, you're too fucking dumb for me to teach this to you. So just do you, bro.
look, if no one can understand you because you're so smart and great, but literally no one else
Understand.
understands you, maybe it's a you problem, dude.
I understand.
Dude, other people are understanding me just fine. It's a you thing.
Okay. All right. So
Anyone
we're
else
going
talk, it's
to
fine.
we are going to continue on. Thank you all for coming through. This has been amazing. This has been a thing. But before we continue, guys, we are going to continue on to our Open Walk On panel afterwards. So if you are hearing this, we have more content for you. No need to step away. Got more content for you. Hit the follow button right now. Hit that follow button. Make sure notifications are on so you know I'm going live. !social and chat for our social media. We got a lot of it. We got Discord. We got Twitter. We got what's the other one? TikTok and YouTube. Follow us on our social media. But yeah, we're going to have more content for you. We're just going to give an outro to all these amazing people, starting with Wick, right? The most amazingest, right? Wick, thank you so much, buddy.
It's you know what, I've missed this in many ways, but in some ways I haven't. I appreciate the chance to come on here and to speak truth to ignorance, and that's been a great thing. Thanks for having me. You can find me at twitch.tv/deathofcertainty, where we realize that no matter how right we think we are, you can't learn something you think you already know, right? Like that's silly. So if your cup's already full, you need to pour a little out and get a little humility and recognize that maybe you don't have all the answers, and maybe you need to look outward, right, from yourself. And I think that's something that we don't have enough of. Tribalism was mentioned, especially by Pepe there, and that's the one point I will agree with him. Tribalism is a cancer and as a disease, as are ideologues, and we've had a few on this panel right here, and they just show their ignorance over and over again. Check me out, give me a follow, and also subscribe to PrimeCayes. He's a great guy. He's a great host for having me. So thank you once again.
Thanks so much. Next, we have our man Lactoid. Lactoid, thank you as well for coming through. Always have a good time with you around, buddy. Lactoid, tell everyone about yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you, Prime, for having me. It's been great, as always. Great topics. I mean, I think I was able to make my points on both of them. If anybody has any questions about the sources I used or the points I was making, just message me. I think, again, I think it was a pretty lively discussion, and I thought the first one was actually like pretty exciting. The second one was exciting as well, but I think we got mired down in like a lot of scientific questions, and when none of us here are PhD scientists. But it'd be cool if we knew what we're talking about on that one. On the where you can find me, Anti-Communism United on Discord and Twitch. If you want to ask me anything, just shoot me a message on Discord. That's where I'm most active. Big shout out to Prime. Subscribe to him for letting me on. Just for that, by the way, because thanks.
Thank you, buddy. All right. Ashley, MVP, especially of this last topic. Ashley, I'm so happy to have you here. I'm really glad you came and you helped elevate this conversation in a way that it wouldn't have been without you here. So thank you so much for spending a bit of your time. I know you're a busy woman. Thank you for spending here.
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess not.
No, I'm. Hey guys. I stream Black Desert at a high level, or quote unquote high level. I do that and I talk trans issues. You can find me by clicking on my little name in the chat. And yeah, that's kind of what I do. All of you are cool people. I like you all. And Lactoid, I'm gonna bully you for studies later. And Scott, I'm gonna bully you later for a conversation sometime.
Absolutely, yeah. Everyone, yeah, follow them on their social medias because you don't want to miss out on that conversation. It sounds like really exciting, actually. And Ashley can operate at full power. Thank you so much. Next, we have Sprouticus.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. We hope to have you on again in the future. Sprouticus is here with us. Sprouticus, thanks for coming through. Especially on that first topic, I thought you were fantastic. Thank you for sharing your opinion.
Yeah, not a problem. The first topic, I've actually spent 6 months with refugees, so I had like a whole lot of time to actually be able to understand the refugee process a lot more and how it works with the United States. So, I mean, that was a very fun topic to interact in. But other than that, I am D Sprouticus. You can find me there. Don't really know where I lie politically. I'm just genuine. So follow me at twitch.tv/DSprouticus or twitter.com/DSprouticus.
Yeah, thank you. I got your Twitter name right this time.
You did.
Yeah. I'm really proud of myself. Thank you, buddy. All right, next we go to Pepe Pinochet. Thank you for coming through. You made a splash here, especially in that first topic. People will remember you. I am certain. But thank you, Pepe, for coming through.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, if anybody wants to, chat with me on in person, you can find me on the politics Discord. Doobie, I don't have the URL memorized.
Point Doobie in chat. politicsdiscord.gg. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, or discord.gg/politics. Yeah. But yeah, exclamation Doobie in chat, guys. If you want to hit up that URL. Next, we have we're gonna go to Scott. Scott, thank you for being as argumentative as you always are.
I'm so mad. I'm so mad Fanatic left, right? Because I was taking a list of all of the examples where he's a Marxist, right? So just like real quick, in terms of his Marxism, he engaged several times in material analysis and historical analysis. In terms of his Volkism, he said that I don't care about any of those people. I want reparations for inward. In terms of his Marcusianism, he justified psychological desires and needs being instilled by the state, as well as saying that the state has a duty to protect people from themselves and engaged in those ideas. So over and over again, we prove that he is ideologically captured neo-Marxist with Volkism and that he's very close to Nazism in his philosophy. So, if you ever want to check out Fanatic IQ, I mean, you can find me at Fabian Liberty pretty much everywhere, but I feel like you boys know me. If you want to check out a Nazi on the platform, just check out Fanatic IQ. And but if you want to see some interviews or some really cool stuff or some philosophy, we do it all on my channel. D&D nights have been moved tomorrow. Every third Tuesday of the month, we're doing serial killer night. Who's the serial killer? And Colt. Who's the serial killer tomorrow? What? Who's the serial killer? Willie Picton. We're doing Willie Picton for serial killer night. All right. Doobie knows who it is. All right. So we'll be doing Willie Picton. And then after that, we'll be watching cult documentaries. That's our third Tuesday of the month. Thank you so much for having me, PrimeCayes. I may hate your politics. I may hate your moderation, but at the end of the day, a fellow Star Wars nerd has to be a friend of mine. All right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Love you too. All right. Seriously, nothing but love, my friend. All right. Let's go. Last but not least, to our Dark Lord and Savior Doobie. Doobie, thank you for coming through and just being you as you usually are. Doobie says he wants to come onto open panel and debate me, meaning that he desperately needs his asshole blown out today. Doobie, thank you.
A little bit gay.
Coming through, buddy. And yeah, I can't wait to embarrass you.
Yeah, whether you guys want to talk about, drag queens shaking their ass in front of children, or that are really triggered about me pointing out that Muhammad is in fact a pedophile. The Muslim prophet is a pedophile, by the way, again. Or all the people who are in chat sewing out about the Swedish shit that I pointed out to everybody. You can come onto the open panel. I'll be there for at least a few hours. It'd be a good time. Oh, and if you guys want to come to the right position on the death penalty, which is that it should happen. Lots of people deserve to be killed. Watch Scott's thing tomorrow when he goes over Mr. Picton. And by the end of that, if you don't support the death penalty, you're fucking insane.
Okay. All right. Thank you all so much. We will continue on to our open walk-on panel right after this. Anyone here can join us, but if not, that's okay. Thanks for spending your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion in my community. I know they appreciate it just as much as I do. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.